You're an alien?
I don't have enough information to form an opinion.
All right, and guess what? By the end of this presentation, I'm going to raise more questions in your head than provide answers. And, you know, you're gonna have a lot to think about. There's a lot of thinking pieces here. There's several videos that, I mean, I have access through NASA, I have access through to thousands, and I can't say that lightly, thousands of videos and pictures and information. And my job, as I see it, is to be a curator. I always wanted to curate a museum when I retired, and this is the next best thing. So we're gonna talk a lot about aliens, what they look like, what they might look like. Is there extraterrestrial life? Where would we find it? What would it look like? When are we likely to find it? All sorts of things. Okay, ready to get started?
Yes.
If you have questions as I'm going through, I'm happy to stop and answer, or we can wait until the end. The presentation is somewhere between around 55 minutes, so there'll be room at the end. And, you know, I'm happy to stay a little later if you want. But not too much later because we have to get the equipment out of here and be out by 8 o'clock. Okay. So thank you very much to Ellen for inviting me. This was very interesting. It's something I agreed to doing thanks to somebody else that's in the audience there about a year ago, not quite knowing what I was getting myself in for because I wasn't an expert on extraterrestrial life. I've got my own opinions, I have for a long time, but I've learned an awful lot in the past 7 or 8 months. All right, so my name is Pat Monteith, and here's a little bit about me. I'm a NASA Solar System Ambassador, which means I get to work for free. One more thing I get to volunteer. And you know, my job is to spread the word about NASA and space science. And STEM opportunities for kids and NASA mission updates and discoveries. And there's tons of things happening on a regular basis. I've conducted well more than 50 programs about NASA and space science on all sorts of topics. I love talking about asteroids in particular and Mars. Those are my 2 favorites out of everything I do, except for Women of NASA. There's a program I do called Hidden Figures and Other Women of NASA that I really, really enjoy doing. It's lots of fun on a lot of levels, and maybe I'll tell you why later. I wanted to, when I was a teenager, when I was, 14 years old, I was determined to go work for NASA. At that point, NASA had a facility in Kendall Square in Cambridge, which a lot of people don't know about, that ended up becoming the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Why? Because John F. Kennedy passed away, and Lyndon Johnson took over and brought the program down to the state. A lot of people don't know that. But when I determined I was not going to move to Houston, and I definitely wasn't going to move to Orlando, I don't like moist weather, so I went into another whole career. But I have a degree in math because I did want to work in mission control. I'm the author of a science fiction mystery novel, you can see it up on here, called The Secret Case of the Space Station Stowaways. I wrote that book about, maybe 4 or 5 years ago for middle school kids, and it's all about the International Space Station and travel, time travel. We won't get there. All right, so the reason I'm here, the reason I was invited is because of Andy Weir's new book. He's the one that wrote The Martian, but his newest book is Project Hail Mary. And just a synopsis of the story, and I took this off the back cover so that I wasn't revealing what was going on. And I want to try not to reveal too much of the book. How many people have read the book? Anybody? Oh, okay. All right, but some of you have not. All right, so this will work out good. So, here's the main character, Ryland Grace, and he awakens from a coma. He's on a spaceship far away, small spaceship, and the other 2 people who were with him didn't quite make it. He's a junior high school teacher. After he wakes up, after many, many years of being in the spaceship, it's a little fuzzy, but he starts clearing up And then his mission, why he's on that spaceship, is to save Earth. And I'm not going to tell you anything else about that. So one of the things that happens with Ryland is he encounters an alien ship with an alien inside who wants to meet him. So what do you think the alien looks like? You think the alien looks like that? No?
Are you asking those that read the book?
You think the alien looks like that? No? Okay. I know some of you read the book. Does the alien look like that? No. Oh my goodness, the aliens got to look like that. No? Okay. Well, let's listen to an audio piece from the book. It's about 2.5 minutes. And it's Ryland explaining and talking about his experience of maybe meeting up with this alien. And then we're going to meet the alien, whose name is Rocky.
I open the outer door and float in, lamp in hand. The hex wall is gone. It's been replaced by a solid wall of clear material. And on the other side of that wall is Rocky. He's a spider. A big-ass spider. I turn to flee, but my rational brain takes over. Easy, easy. They're friendly, I say to myself. I turn back and take in the scene. Rocky is smaller than a human. He's about the size of a Labrador. He has 5 legs radiating out from a central carapace-looking thing. The carapace, which is roughly a pentagon, is 18 inches across and half as thick. I don't see his eyes or a face anywhere. Each leg has a joint in the middle. I'll call it an elbow. Each leg, or should I say arm, ends in a hand. So he's got 5 hands. Each hand has those triangular fingers I got a good look at last time. Looks like all 5 hands are the same. I don't see any front or back to him. He appears to be pentagonally symmetrical. He wears clothing. The legs are bare, showing the rock-like skin, but there's cloth on the carapace, sort of like a shirt with 5 armholes. I don't know what the shirt is made of, but it looks thicker than typical human clothing. It's a dull greenish brown and inconsistently shaded. The top of the shirt has a large open hole, like where the neck goes on the human's t-shirt. That hole is smaller than the carapace, so he must have to put that shirt on by pulling it downward and sliding the arms through their respective holes. Again, like a human shirt. But there's no neck or head to go through that hole on top, just a hard-looking rocky pentagon that sticks up a little bit from the crusty skin. Says Rocky. My jaw drops. Yes, I'm in 0G. It still drops. There was no pronunciation or inflection of the sounds, just notes like whale song, except not quite like whale song because there were several at once. Whale chords, I guess. And he was responding to me. That means he can hear too. And notably, the sounds were in my range of hearing. Some of the notes were low, some of them high, but definitely audible. That alone is amazing when I think about it. He's from a different planet and totally different evolutionary line, but we ended up with compatible sound ranges. On top of all that, he decided my noises warranted a response. You have a language, I say. How do you have a language? You don't have a mouth. Rocky explains. Thinking rationally, you can't make spaceships without civilization, and you can't have civilization without being able to communicate. So, of course, they have language. It's interesting that communication is done with sound.
Okay. So for those of you who read the book and didn't listen to the audio, or those of you who may not have found this photo or this graphic that I found, and I don't know where I found it, is this what you would have thought Rocky would look like? No? Yeah, when you think about the description of Rocky, and when I found this, it's like, oh, that looks just like what I I would have expected Rocky to look like, which was pretty amazing. And those are the sounds that are actually from the audio version of the book that was approved by the author. So if it was supposed to be something else, that's what ended up happening. All right, so we've met Rocky. You know, you stop and think about, is that what you would have expected to find as an alien from another world so far away from us? Probably not. But we're gonna give you some other things to think about in terms of what aliens might look like or sound like. But first, before I do that, anybody who's been with my presentations before know that I like to put some history in here. I like to make sure that we're all on the same plane. And so one of the things that I want to do is I want to give you some terminology that we can all understand. And that is, what is a solar system? Okay, solar system consists of a star and everything that orbits around it. So in our case, our sun is a star. And if I use the word star or sun, I'm talking about something that looks like our own sun. And in our own solar system, the sun includes 8 planets. No, Pluto is not a planet. I'm not going to get into that. It's not a planet. There's actually 200 moons in our solar system, an asteroid belt and the Kuiper belt that has comets and all sorts of stuff. And solar systems are part of galaxies. And our solar system is, does anybody know what solar system?
Milky Way.
All right, that's right. Whoops. Come on. No. I'm hitting the wrong button. Go back. Okay, Milky Way. There we go. And so scientists actually estimate there are tens of billions, not millions, billions of solar systems in just the Milky Way galaxy. You know, and some of these numbers that I'm going to be throwing out are unfathomable. Even unfathomable to me too. What is a galaxy? Galaxy is bigger than a solar system. It's a group of stars, group of solar systems. Gas, dust, you know, everything's bound together by gravity, and stars have galaxies have a lot of stars, between hundreds of millions to billions of stars. And then there's the universe, and the universe is bigger than the galaxy. And the universe has more than 100 billion galaxies. So here's a picture of the Milky Way galaxy, and it's called the Milky Way because of that band, that white band of what looks like milky white in the sky. And I'm not going to get into the details of it, but has anyone ever seen the Milky Way galaxy?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Isn't it the most stunning thing you could ever imagine? I've been out in the Painted Desert in Arizona and out in like Montana and stuff like that. And to see the Milky Way is just breathtaking. You can actually go up to northern Maine and see that as well. You know, we don't know exactly how many stars are in the Milky Way galaxy, but it's pretty large. 100,000 light years across is the whole Milky Way galaxy. It's a spiral galaxy. You can see that in the bottom right-hand corner there. And we're about 2/3 out from the galaxy center in what's called the Orion Arm. So quickly to go through the definitions again, because I'm going to, and I apologize if I just throw these words out because I've been dealing with this for so long. I know the difference between a solar system, which is a sun or a star. It doesn't have to just be ours, but our solar system, as we determined, is the Milky Way galaxy. Galaxy is a huge collection of dust and gas and billions of stars. The universe is everything, okay? And another word for the universe is the cosmos. And then we'll talk a little bit later on about exoplanets, which is a planet outside not only our solar system, but it's planets outside any solar system that's out there. So again, in summary, we live on planet Earth, which is part of our local solar system. Our local solar system includes the sun, our sun, and everything that orbits it. Our sun is just one star in the Milky Way galaxy, and the Milky Way galaxy is just one galaxy in the universe. And the universe is the totality of everything every known object that you could imagine. Okay, so what do you think aliens look like? Any thoughts? No? Let's see if we...
Based on the book, they have to adapt to whatever atmosphere they're at.
Well, okay. That's part of it, based on the book. And a lot of the book has real science facts in it, I will tell you that. But let's find something else that might get us thinking in a different direction.
Imagine coming face to face with an alien. What would it look like? It turned out we could have a clue. The universe is a vast and mysterious place. It is hardly believable that we, Earthlings, might be the only ones living in it. There are around 40 to 60 billion Earth-sized planets orbiting in the habitable zone in the Milky Way galaxy alone. The odds of finding extraterrestrial life on one of these planets remain high, but how can we determine their appearance? In movies and science fiction novels, aliens are mostly depicted as humanoids, very much like us, because that's the simplest form our brains can process. But whether aliens are small or big, thin or thick, tall or short, have multiple limbs or noses, all can be guessed based on the environment they live in. Not only that planets are so different from each other in size and environment, the rules of physics and chemistry across the universe might not always be the same, meaning that living creatures potentially face different challenges when trying to survive. One such aspect is gravity. If a planet has high gravity, the living creature would have a hard time lifting itself from the ground. Even if it manages to do so, it would still be challenging to keep its balance. That's why it might evolve extra limbs to help it stand, balance, and move. For example, Kepler 452b, which is often called a cousin of Earth, has very high gravity. If some creatures live on it, it is possible that they will be flat, close to the ground like worms. On the contrary, in places with low gravity, the creatures could easily glide. Here they might need a few extra hands to hold into things to prevent them from flying off. They could also be taller than the creatures on Earth, just like how astronauts grow taller in zero gravity. Another influence comes from air density. If the air is too thick, more living creatures can fly, just like we swim in the water here on Earth. On the other hand, if the air is lighter and full of oxygen, living creatures might evolve to produce more energy and have energy-demanding powers. Just like humans, extraterrestrial life would also require generating its own energy. Humans do this by eating and generating the energy from food. Aliens could evolve very different ways to gain energy, which would influence the way they look. For instance, they might feed off cosmic rays like one type of bacteria on Earth that lives on radiation from uranium. It is possible that life in places with little energy available is many times smaller, but it doesn't mean it won't be as complex. The world outside the planet and the planet itself can also influence how life turns out. Some planets' orbit around these stars might not be round, but elliptical instead. The winters there are long and very cold because the planet travels far from the sun for a long time. There are many ways for life to adapt to such harsh conditions, just like animals do on Earth with fur. If the planet would get too much radiation, aliens on it could look more like plants that can quickly roll up and hide when solar flares happen. The planet might not have a star. In that case, it would be dark and cold, but life could still thrive. On Earth, in the darkest places where there is no sunlight and the temperature is very low, like the bottom of the ocean, there exist microbes, worms, clams, and shrimps. At the same time, different alien species could still compete against each other, driven by natural selection. The fight for energy could lead to the emergence of predators and prey. This means that some aliens could develop ways to hunt other aliens down. Same as on Earth, predators have fangs or strong muscles to chase their prey. The prey would also develop ways to protect themselves like camouflage or well-developed senses. But when is it that we will finally meet our extraterrestrial neighbors? And will we even be able to recognize them? We might find out through missions like the TESS mission, which is studying potentially inhabited planets outside our solar system, and the NASA's mission to Europa, which will explore the fascinating moon of Jupiter that has more liquid water than Earth. Nevertheless, the universe is far from explained. We cannot know for sure what aliens would look like unless we see them. Thus, regardless of all predictions, we might be in for a big surprise.
Okay, so does that give you a little bit of things to think about? Yeah? Okay. Guess what? That's not all I want to show you. There's a lot more than that. All right, so, we've got just an overview there of what aliens might look like and, what they might need on their planets to be able to survive and some of the issues. And it's going to get more interesting as we get more into the presentation. But, the question is, how do we go looking for aliens? Okay, any thoughts? No? Okay, quiet.
Are we listening always?
Huh?
Don't we have like, I'm not sure what the instrument is, but we're listening.
There we go, okay. But it starts with the word telescope. And telescopes have changed our understanding of the universe as far back as 1610 to the days of Galileo, who tried just a regular type of telescope to the sky and learned things like Saturn had rings and Jupiter had moons, and he's the one that discovered the Milky Way. Telescopes progressed, and these are just regular optical telescopes, but we are going to get into radio telescopes in a minute. And in the 1920s, Edwin Hubble, who was as important to astronomy as Galileo, used the largest telescope he had available to discover galaxies beyond our own. So in 1960, he lived around the 1920s. In 1960, the Hubble telescope that went up and is looking at the universe from above our atmosphere. Our atmosphere creates problems in terms of being able, and distortions, from being able to see beyond, the immediate area of Earth. We're not going to get into that this time around, but that's pretty fascinating as well. And Hubble's deployment in 1990 was the most significant advance in astronomy since Galileo's telescope, almost 400 years earlier. But then, what's next after Hubble? Well, the James Webb Space Telescope. And over there on the table, there's some pictures and information about the James Webb Space Telescope. I've done a couple of programs about it. If you have not seen any of the photos from the James Webb Space Telescope, I strongly, and I can't say this strong enough, but strongly advise you to go on a computer and look at some of the photos that have come up about other planets and asteroids and the universe back to the days of the first galaxy. The whole story about the James Webb Space Telescope is very interesting. And this is something that, again, it's up about 1 million miles away from Earth, peering around the universe and getting some incredible information. As we just heard here, one of the things that also happens, besides just looking at optical telescopes, but if we're trying to find aliens, then what we want to do is we want to listen to what might be out there. And know that it's not a mistake with the S looking backwards with the dot on the bottom. That's referred to as the SETI Institute, and SETI stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Okay, and let's learn a little bit about SETI, which are, in fact, they do it through radio telescopes, as you can see right here. So back in the 1960s, Francis Drake, created this telescope to start listening for radio signals. And, the hope was that they would find extraterrestrial intelligence by using the radio telescopes off on the far end of the galaxy. And, one of their other goals is to look how to identify signals from extraterrestrial civilizations. How do we know what those signals sound like? And we're going to see our own attempt at trying to let people in, or critters, creatures, whatever you want to call them, aliens in other parts of the universe know about us. And then, one of the other things that SETI does is to identify patterns computers find difficult to analyze due to random noise and interference. So one of the first SETI telescopes was actually created and managed right here in Massachusetts. And it is probably no surprise that it was developed by Harvard University, but it was also built in Harvard, Massachusetts. I don't know how many people know where Harvard is, but.
I'm from Stowe.
No, okay. Boy, do you know where Harvard is. And if you go off right now, and I don't know if you know about the radio telescope that lived in, or was created in Harvard many, many years ago. It was at that time, back in 1933, the fourth largest telescope of its type in the world. And it was the largest optical telescope east of Texas, and SETI was using that telescope to start searching for other things in the universe, like aliens. Here's what SETI looks like now with its current array of many, many, many radio telescopes that are just pointed to little bits of different parts of the sky to be able to figure out, if there's anybody out there, can we get their signal? And it's going to be very interesting. There's one video a little later on that's going to make you think about how easy or not easy it is to be able to find radio signals.
Where is that located?
Huh?
Where is that located?
I want to say Australia. That's funny, I don't know off the top of my head. There's a couple of different arrays of radio telescopes, and another one is one that just came online recently, the Meerkat telescope. And this one's in South Africa. But this article just came out in December, just a couple of months ago, and those are the Meerkat telescopes that are searching for alien life with a different new high-end type of telescope. This technology is just absolutely incredible, and Grady could probably give you a better idea of talking about radio telescopes than I could. But it's fascinating to see whether or not we're ever going to find sounds of life out there through all these radio telescopes. All right, so, the question is, why do I keep doing that? Does life exist beyond Earth? That's the big question. With SETI and all sorts of other telescopes, we are starting to look for life elsewhere. The big question is, do we know what we're looking for? Are we looking for something that looks like us? Are we looking for something that looks like Rocky? Do we know what it is that we're looking for? Let's try another video. This one has a crawl along the beginning, out along the bottom, which is why I was saying if you couldn't see that other thing. But this is questions from astrobiologists. Is it easy to try to figure out what life looks like? The one great example we have is right here on Earth. Can everybody see that? If you say no, then I can't help you. So, astrobiology is a part of space science that really was only developed about 40 years ago. There's a group of scientists at NASA and elsewhere that say, okay, well, let's start seeing if we can find something that looks like us. And if that's the case, then what do we need to know about the planets that they might come from? And what kind of chemical makeup might they have in order to grow up looking like us? Good question, huh? All right, so, again, what would life look like elsewhere? Okay. Would you recognize extraterrestrial life if you saw it? Maybe. Would it look like that? It looks like a walking plant, doesn't it? Actually, a walking sod or something really weird. Would it look like Rocky? I don't know. Would it look like this thing here? Is that real?
Yes.
Do you know what it is?
It's a dust mite.
Huh?
It's a dust mite.
Nope.
Headlights.
We'll get back and talk about this critter in a little while. Could it look like that? That would be pretty scary. Hello. Again, if we are looking through a telescope and we see something like that, how much would we freak out? I know I would. And then there's other aliens amongst us. I don't know. But gotta have a little fun with this, right? But, would you know extraterrestrial life if you saw it? If it was big, small, we got a hint a little while ago about, there are, germs and bacteria in the farthest depths of the ocean. That's life. Is that extraterrestrial life? Is that what we're gonna find on Europa when we go searching for that water planet? Or a water moon, sorry. I don't know. What do you think? So let's go on, and I think this is another video that ties in with this.
Scientists across many fields have tackled this question. They can't agree on one shape, size, or color. But some suggest there are key traits no intelligent alien being could live without. For example, living on land in order to develop rocket technology, binocular vision to judge distance, eyes near the brain to minimize the time it takes the brain to receive and process signals, at least 2 legs for mobility, and hands with at least 3 fingers to firmly grip and manipulate tools. When you put all these together, aliens might look a lot like we do. That's not a surprise, according to the world-leading expert on evolution, Richard Dawkins. Dawkins has said that the building blocks of biology, like protein and DNA, could be the same everywhere. It does look as though protein has got some very, very important properties that might have to be universal. If that's the case, then all life across the cosmos could evolve similarly to Earth's, eventually creating beings that walked and even talked like Homo sapiens. Of course, there are some who challenge this idea. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson has argued that aliens are probably made of the same chemicals as us, helium, carbon, and oxygen. But that doesn't necessarily mean they have to resemble human form. If anything is certain, it is that life elsewhere in the universe, intelligent or otherwise, will look at least as exotic as some of Earth's own life forms. Who was right? That's something only the aliens can answer.
More to think about, huh? Yeah, definitely. Okay. So what do you think would happen if an alien came down to Earth and met up with one of these living species on Earth? What would they think? So what if they didn't meet us first? What if they didn't meet humans first, but they met a lion or an elephant or a parrot that talked back to them? Or my favorite, the flamingo. Then of course there's the giraffe, hello. But we don't stop and think about it. It's like, as we go to other places and we search out life, what happens when aliens come, or maybe they have come years ago, and they met some of these creatures and said, oh my goodness, this is scary, I want to get out of here, right? You know, does anybody have a clue how many different species we have here on Earth? Quite a few, huh? 2 million. We have 2 million species here on Earth of animals. Isn't that incredible? And, you know, even with the ones who lived the longest, hundreds of years, none of them have mastered technology except for humans. Okay? Pretty amazing, huh? Is that happening on other planets? On exoplanets? In other star systems? Elsewhere in the universe? I don't know. It's up to you to decide. All right, so let's go with my favorite little buddy. This is called a tardigrade, T-A-R-D-I-G-R-A-D-E. And he's really, really tiny. He's smaller, he or she, is smaller than my fingernail. And they're all over Earth. And my biggest fear is we have sent some of these tardigrades off Earth. But I'm not going to go into that. I don't want to be taped saying that. What is that? Interesting. Just to show you how different life can be here on Earth and how life can be probably as different elsewhere. Let's learn a little bit about the tardigrade. I really love tardigrades, even though I've never met one.
Without water, a human can only survive for about 100 hours. But there's a creature so resilient that it can go without it for decades. This 1 millimeter animal can survive both the hottest and coldest environments on Earth, and can even withstand high levels of radiation. This is the tardigrade, and it's one of the toughest creatures on Earth, even if it does look more like a chubby, 8-legged gummy bear. Most organisms need water to survive. Water allows metabolism to occur, which is the process that drives all the biochemical reactions that take place in cells. But creatures like the tardigrade, also known as the water bear, get around this restriction with a process called anhydrobiosis, from the Greek meaning life without water. And however extraordinary, tardigrades aren't alone. Bacteria, single-celled organisms called archaea, plants, and even other animals can all survive drying up. For many tardigrades, this requires that they go through something called a tun state. They curl up into a ball, pulling their head and 8 legs inside their body, and wait until water returns. It's thought that as water becomes scarce and tardigrades enter their tun state, they start to synthesize special molecules which fill the tardigrade cells to replace lost water by forming a matrix. Components of the cells that are sensitive to dryness, like DNA, proteins, and membranes, get trapped in this matrix. It's thought that this keeps these molecules locked in position to stop them from unfolding, breaking apart, or fusing together. Once the organism is rehydrated, the matrix dissolves, leaving behind undamaged, functional cells. Beyond dryness, tardigrades can also tolerate other extreme stresses, being frozen, heated up past the boiling point of water, high levels of radiation, and even the vacuum of outer space.
I love tardigrades. They're so, right, resilient in a lot of different ways. But again, you know, are there things from other planets that are like our tardigrades? And have our tardigrades been populated in other places? As I said, I'm not going to go there. All right, something to think about though, right? Yeah, I told you I'm going to give you a lot of things to think about in this presentation. All right, so one of the things that, you know, what do we do if we find an alien? What do we do if we discover an extraterrestrial? And some people are starting to freak out about that. It's like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen with humanity if in fact we do discover an alien? How are we gonna deal with that? So just, again, a couple of months ago, I found this article that came out in November of last year. We're largely unprepared for when an extraterrestrial reaches out to us. And so for the first time in, I think, 35, 40 years, scientists are finally now working on a protocol, alien contact protocol. Ryland didn't know what to do when he met Rocky, right? What would we do if we met a Rocky, and how would we respond to that? So in fact, scientists have been working on protocols, as I said, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, and they're now, and I think I said to a few of you before this all started, and NASA is finding themselves in a position where this is back on everybody's plate again. And so they're putting together teams of scientists to start talking about extraterrestrials and aliens and what would happen if we contacted them or they, more importantly, contacted us. So, we're going to go back a little bit, as I said, a little history here. NASA launched a space probe in 1972, which completed actually the first mission to the planet Jupiter. It escaped the velocity of our solar system to be able to go to the far reaches of the solar system. And so one of the things that they did with Pioneer 10 is embedded within the spacecraft is this thing that you can see here down in the bottom right-hand side. They put together a panel that shows what humans look like. And there's different interpretations that they're expecting any intelligent civilization outside of Earth would be able to interpret. Whether that's true or not is another matter. But this actually started a conversation about whether or not we're providing too much information to people outside of Earth about who we are and what we look like and what we do. But that didn't stop NASA, of course not. So, we go from Pioneer 10 to 5 years later, in the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 mission, which was launched in 1977, to study the outer solar system, Uranus and Neptune. And if you want some postcards from, Uranus and Neptune, they're available there for people who have visited. Whatever. And what's really, really interesting, and I'll show you in another minute, is both Voyagers actually have gone outside of our solar system. They've reached that plane where, they're entering the outermost areas, and they're out of what's referred to as our heliosphere, which is the area that is controlled by the sun's gravity. And they're beyond that now. Now, really, really amazing stuff, and again, I'll show you in a minute, is that they're still functioning. They're beyond our solar system. Now, they can't take photos and images, but in fact, they can send back data, and they are sending back data. Everybody's prediction that they were going to die in 2012 didn't come true. And then they said, oh, it's going to be 2020. Nah. Now they're predicting another 3 years. So it's really, really fascinating. And of course, NASA isn't revealing what they're finding. Whatever. So one of the things that's on both Voyager 1, Voyager 2 is something that I have a copy of there, thanks to Grady who bought me one for a Christmas present, which are these discs, record albums. You know what a record album is? Anybody here know what a record album is? Yeah, there we go. But they're record albums. It's called the Golden Record. It was created by Carl Sagan. I'm sure most of you know who that is. And it includes 115 images of Earth, a variety of sounds such as the surf and wind and birds and whales and other animals, musical selections from lots of different cultures and eras, and spoken greetings from Earth people in 55 different languages. Now, again, they sent that out on Voyager 1 and 2 if somebody found that. I don't know what they're gonna think about us, but we won't go there.
How are they gonna play it back?
Huh?
How are they gonna play it back?
Good question, isn't that? I don't know, I don't know if they send a record player along with it, but.
If they have electricity, or whatever.
We won't go there now, will we? My research has only gone so far. All I know is I've got copies of the record albums, and I've heard some of the sounds. It's just unbelievable, and it's a great mix. But are we telling people, are we telling other aliens in the universe, well, too much about what we're like? As I said, back in 2012, Voyager 1 and 2 entered the outermost layers of the heliosphere. They're still operation. Who knows how much longer they're going to continue returning data. You know, same thing like when NASA sends rovers to Mars. You know, these things are working. The Curiosity rover is working, 15, 20 years longer than anybody ever could have imagined. So it's really, really great. Some of this, I won't get into termination shock and stuff like that. That's just too much for all of us to detail. And I don't know that much about it either, so I won't go there. I know my limitations. All right, so you see something over there to the right side of the record that, anybody know what it is? Anybody want to guess what it is?
Tetris.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like a game of Tetris.
Piece of art.
Piece of art. No, it's something that SETI not only is collecting signals from, but actually SETI sent that out. SETI sent messages. That's from the Arecibo, it's the Arecibo messages to aliens, and Francis Drake, who we talked about earlier, and Carl Sagan, created this interstellar radio message carrying basic information. It's computer code. That's what you're looking at right there is computer code. And it was sent to this thing, the bottom right-hand side of the slide shows you this globular cluster that they pointed the Arecibo radio telescope, which is there on the left bottom, to, and they were sending out this message. Now, interesting enough, the message is only 3 minutes long, and it keeps repeating over and over and over. And some people think that's why the Arecibo radio telescope was destroyed. But no, I'm only kidding. We'll talk about that in a second too. But it's meant to not enter into a conversation with extraterrestrials, but to demonstrate our human technological achievement.
Has it answered yet? Anything out there?
Not that we've heard back from, but
They're
you'll
telling us,
understand.
yeah.
But you'll understand why in a minute. So, there's the graphic right there, giving you a little bit more detail. It's computer code, it's ones and zeros, total broadcast less than 3 minutes. And if you take a look carefully, you might see the Arecibo telescope down there in the bottom. Our solar system, I could never figure that out. A stick figure of a human, and some of the biochemicals of Earth life. So that's what that message says, I guess, but if you interpret it. But yeah, I got that as a Christmas present, so I thought we'd bring it in. Sounds cool. But as I said, unfortunately, 2 years ago, the Arecibo telescope, which was in Puerto Rico, which advanced so many areas of astronomy, it collapsed, just collapsed one day out of the clear blue sky. Nobody, we still don't know how, nobody got hurt. And they decided not to try to rebuild it, and they're pulling it apart and just putting some sort of facility there. I don't know exactly what. So there's a lot of things that it was bringing back for information, and it was within that, sending out these 3 minutes worth of information to the globular cluster. And it was I remember the day it collapsed, and the whole astronomy community just, I'm sure grown men cried with this one. This was really a very important radio telescope. All right, so I've got another video coming up, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it is because I didn't make myself any notes to tell you. But I'm sure it has something to do with alien life, search for alien life. I think, maybe.
Exploring our own world and the universe beyond has been full of surprises.
Great, can you bring that up?
Just a few hundred years ago, we assumed that everything about us and our surroundings was special and unique. Now we know there are lots of stars out there, many like our sun. We're discovering other solar systems with planets. And the chemicals of life, forged in stars, are abundant in the universe. If those common chemicals have caught the spark of life somewhere else, who knows how that life will evolve, what path it will follow, and whether we'll ever meet. But is it crazy to believe that somewhere beyond our planet, life has taken root? Here on Earth, we are the only species that has mastered technology. Since it's so rare here, should we really expect technology to be common among the aliens? Many would say no. When paleontologist Peter Ward looks at Earth's track record, the odds for technological aliens don't seem very promising.
There's maybe 30 million species on the planet today. And if we look at the fossils, there are hundreds of millions of species in the past. But only one of them which has risen to technology. It's happened one time out of hundreds of millions of possibilities on planet Earth. One time only.
Humans have been leaking radio waves into space for most of the past century. Compared to the history of our Milky Way galaxy, about 10 billion years, that's a tiny blip. And we've been actively listening for radio signals from distant civilizations for only about 40 years. If the aliens are on the other side of the galaxy, any signal they send could take tens of thousands of years to reach Earth. It's as if the aliens were throwing a dart and trying to hit one tiny spot on this enormous landscape of time and space. Let's face it, the odds of our capturing that signal aren't very good. And yet, who can blame us for trying?
For me, it's the most interesting question. Are we alone? What's our place in this universe? How do we fit in? Are we just run-of-the-mill? Are we totally exceptional? Or are we somewhere in between?
I feel like I'm 6 years old when I say it. I feel almost embarrassed. I just want to know, are they out there? And all of my science training and math and skills as a researcher kind of go out the door. I just feel that this is a question that is going to be so profound for us as a species, but also individually. Each one of us will have to look within ourselves and figure out what it means to us.
Are we alone? Are we rare? Are we common? We still do not know. But perhaps someday we will. And the answer, whatever it is, will reshape our sense of ourselves and our place in the universe.
Giving you something to think about? I told you, didn't I? All right, so, how do we find life? And here's where we're going to start talking about exoplanets. We need to look for evidence of oxygen, look for liquid water, analyze the reflected light from the planet to see if the planet has an atmosphere, and then we're going to look for cows. We're looking for other signs of biological activity, like methane, which cows produce.